The alley reeked of rot and desperation. Rain beat down in thin, needling streams, smearing the filth from the rooftops into the gutters. Jude's hoodie clung to him like a second skin, soaked through, blood-stained. His knuckles were raw from the fight. No, not a fight, a slaughter. It was never a fight when they had the fangs. Or the drugs. Tessa stumbled behind him, clutching her side, breath coming in sharp, wet gasps. The bite mark on her neck was leaking crimson. Not enough to kill her, but enough to stain her skin, enough to make her smell like prey. They'd followed the wrong trail, made the wrong deal. And now Dren was hunting them. Over here, Jude hissed, spotting a rusted chain-link fence. With a grunt, he boosted Tessa over. Her foot caught the top, ripping open her shoe, but she didn't cry out. She couldn't. Crying out in a city like this was an invitation to be found. He dropped after her, landing in mud. The backyard beyond was forgotten. Grass waist-high, windows blacked out with grime. The house looked like it had been gutted decades ago and left to fester. Rot clung to it in a thick fog, as if it breathed decay. But it had 4 walls. And a door. And no lights. A hiding place. They bolted across the yard, not even stopping when Jude kicked in the back door. The house groaned in protest, as though awakening from a long, bitter slumber. Dust thick as fog swirled in the air. Every surface was layered with age and abandonment. Something in the walls felt wrong. Wet. Breathing. Tessa collapsed inside, back to the wall, her skin pale as wax. Jude slammed the door shut and locked the rusted deadbolt. "We're safe," he panted. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. No place was safe. Not anymore. Not since bleed hit the streets. Bleed, pure vampire blood, harvested and refined into a crimson narcotic. 1 drop could send you into euphoria. 3 could tear your mind apart. Dealers controlled everything. The streets. The addicts. The vampires they kept chained like cattle beneath nightclubs and alley dens. Vampires didn't stalk prey anymore. They were the prey. And addicts like Dren bled them dry. But Dren wasn't just an addict. He was a butcher. And Jude had stolen from him. A vial of pure. 1 drop could have bought them a new life. Instead, it got them hunted. Jude moved to the kitchen. Mold climbed the walls. A fridge stood dead and crooked. He yanked it open. Empty, except for a dark smear across the back wall. Something red, dried and crusted. Blood. Too old to be useful. Tessa groaned. "Jude, we need to go. He's coming. He can smell me." "I know," Jude said. But he had nothing. No escape plan. No more drugs to trade. Just this house. This ruin. He wandered through the hallway, his boots leaving prints in the thick dust. The air grew colder as he moved. The wallpaper peeled like skin. The floor sagged under his weight. Something about this house pulsed, quiet, rhythmic. Almost like breathing. Jude paused. He wasn't alone. A creak. Upstairs. He turned slowly toward the staircase, heart hammering. His hand wrapped around the blade tucked in his waistband, a rusted hunting knife. Useless against a real vamp. But maybe Dren hadn't found them yet. Maybe this place wasn't as empty as it looked. The stairs groaned under his step. Dust fell like snow from the ceiling as he crept up, one hand trailing the rail, another tight on the knife. At the top, the hallway stretched long and dark. Doors lined either side, all closed. All silent. Until one whispered open. The door at the end. Just a few inches. A sliver of blackness. And from within, the soft sound of breathing. No, not just breathing. Sleeping. Jude approached slowly, feeling every hair on his body rise. The knife trembled in his grip. He pushed the door open. Inside, the room was bare. Bare except for a single iron bed bolted to the floor. And in the bed, a girl. She couldn't have been older than 14. Pale as moonlight, hair matted to her face. A thin gown clung to her. Her limbs were bound with leather straps, ankles, wrists, neck. But her chest rose and fell. Steady. Calm. Alive. Jude backed away, nearly tripping over his own feet. What the hell was this? He turned, intending to run, to grab Tessa and get out of this cursed place, but then he saw something that made his blood freeze. Carved into the inside of the door, deep into the wood, were these words. Do not wake her. Jude didn't breathe. Couldn't. The air turned sour. Thick. Tessa called weakly from downstairs, her voice breaking. Jude spun and fled down the stairs. But something had changed. The shadows stretched farther. The walls pulsed like veins. And the door wouldn't budge. Outside, the rain had stopped. But the silence pressed against the house like a scream waiting to burst. He turned to Tessa, who was slumped against the wall, barely conscious. Her lips were dark with blood. And then, her eyes widened. He turned. And saw the girl at the top of the stairs. Still strapped. Still bound. Still asleep. But her eyes were open. Bleeding. Blood poured from her tear ducts in thin, glistening streams, trickling down her cheeks like red mascara. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Just the hiss of wind. And then, a whisper inside Jude's skull, you woke me. He didn't move. He didn't scream. Not yet. That came later. When the house began to breathe again. And the walls began to bleed. The girl didn't blink. Her eyes streamed blood as she stared down from the staircase, her bound limbs twitching, jerking like a puppet on strings. The leather restraints groaned with tension, stretching taut, cracking at the seams. Tessa let out a small moan behind Jude. Jude, what is that? He didn't answer. Couldn't. The girl's mouth opened slowly. Too wide. Her jaw clicked, distended like something broken, unnatural. Her lips peeled back into a grin that was more pain than joy, revealing not fangs, but rows of sharpened, misshapen teeth, hundreds of them, growing behind each other like a shark's nightmare. Then she spoke. But not with her mouth. The house spoke for her. The floor beneath them thrummed like a heartbeat. The walls shuddered. The air filled with a deep, guttural whisper that crawled inside their heads, bypassing their ears and burrowing straight into the mind. Bleed for me. Jude grabbed Tessa, pulling her up. Her legs barely worked, but she clung to him. We need to get out. Now. The front door wouldn't budge. He yanked, kicked, slammed his shoulder into it. Nothing. It was as if the wood had fused to the frame. Behind them, the girl took a step forward. The leather straps that bound her didn't snap, they sank into her skin like worms retreating underground. Blood poured from the punctures, thick and slow. She was free. But still asleep. Her eyes remained half-lidded, as if trapped in a dream she couldn't wake from. And she was walking. Window. Tessa gasped, pointing toward the front of the house. Jude ran, dragging her. He swung a chair into the glass. It shattered, but the shards didn't fall. They hung in the air, vibrating, each piece humming like it was alive. Then they reversed course and flew back into place, sealing the window shut in a grotesque jigsaw of bloodied glass. He turned. The girl was at the bottom of the stairs now. Her gown was soaked through with red, her feet leaving prints of blood in perfect circles. She didn't walk like a human. She glided forward like she belonged to the house, and the house bent itself to her. "She's part of it," Jude whispered. "The house. She's feeding it." They backed into the hallway, and the walls seemed to close in. Pictures melted in their frames, faces warping into howls. The floorboards writhed underfoot like snakes beneath skin. A door to the right swung open on its own. Inside, a dining room. And a long table, set for guests. Each plate had a name carved into it, in dried blood. Jude. Tessa. Dren. The third name made Jude's heart seize. He turned to Tessa, who stared blankly. "He's coming," she whispered. A sound echoed from somewhere outside. A laugh. Wet and sharp, like a cough full of nails. "Dren." The girl stopped moving. For now. She tilted her head, listening. Jude pulled Tessa through the dining room and into the kitchen again, desperate to find any exit. But the back door had melted into the wall. Literally oozed away, leaving a pulsing, fleshy patch of wood where the knob used to be. Then the floor groaned. A deep crack split down the center of the room. Blood began to bubble up, thick and black-red, stinking of rot and iron. Jude backed away, but the kitchen was closing in, walls pushing forward like ribs constricting around a heart. And the girl was moving again. Not toward them. But toward the front door. The same door that wouldn't open before. Jude turned, wide-eyed, just as a knock came from the other side. A slow, deliberate knock. 3 times. Knock. 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 Then a voice, Dren's voice. "Jude. You took from me." Tessa whimpered. "He'll come in. You know he will." The girl stood before the door like a sentinel. And the door opened. Dren stepped inside. Tall, skeletal, his eyes red-rimmed and jaundiced from years of bleeding. His veins pulsed with the drug. His lips curled into a grin that revealed filed-down teeth. He carried a silver stake in one hand and a leash in the other. Something crawled behind him. Something hissing. "You led me right to her," he said. "You don't even know what you've done." He saw the girl, and froze. The leash dropped. "No," he whispered. "Not her. You can't have woken her." The girl turned her head slowly. Her bloody eyes fixed on Dren. Her mouth opened again. "You are unclean." And the house screamed. The walls split. Tendrils of flesh and sinew lashed out from cracks in the floor, wrapping around Dren's legs, his arms, his chest. He shrieked and slashed, but the house was faster. Hungrier. It pulled him in. Bone snapped. Flesh tore. Blood sprayed the walls in arcs. The leash snapped taut, and whatever creature was on the other end dragged itself into the house, licking the blood with a barbed tongue before it too was devoured. Jude and Tessa watched in horror. The girl turned back to them, her voice echoing from every corner of the room. "You brought him to me. I am grateful. You may bleed next." Then she smiled. And the walls began to breathe again. Jude backed into the pantry, dragging Tessa with him. He slammed the door shut just as the kitchen was overtaken by red light and wet noise, sounds of chewing, tearing, screaming. They held each other, silent. Then a final whisper crawled through the cracks. "You woke me. Now you feed me." And the house kept bleeding. Inside the cramped, dark pantry, Jude and Tessa huddled together, listening to the house devour Dren. The sounds outside weren't just screams, they were memories being torn apart. Each wet crunch and gurgling shriek felt like it etched itself into their bones. The house wasn't just killing him. It was absorbing him. The floor vibrated with pulses like a heartbeat. The smell of iron and rot crept through the door's slats, clinging to their lungs. "Is it over?" Tessa whispered, but the quiver in her voice said she already knew it wasn't. "No," Jude muttered, pressing his ear to the door. The silence on the other side was worse than the screams. It was waiting. He opened the door slowly. The kitchen had changed. Blood slicked every surface, dripping from the ceiling like a crimson rain. The walls had cracked open, exposing muscle and sinew beneath wood. The appliances breathed, rising and falling like chests. The sink gurgled thick clots of red. In the center of it all stood the girl, now fully awake. She was no longer bound. Her white gown now stained black-red and hanging in tatters. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, showing the veins underneath, veins that pulsed and throbbed, spider-webbed with something moving inside them. She stared at them. Jude raised his hands. "We didn't mean to wake you. We didn't know." Her head tilted. "You bled. I remember your scent." Tessa clutched Jude's arm, whispering, "She remembers it. The blood. Yours." Jude's sleeve, it was torn, soaked red where the broken glass had slashed him earlier. A few drops. That was all it had taken. The girl drifted forward. "You woke me from the feeding sleep. I was dreaming of the old cities. Of catacombs and crimson feasts." Her voice was soft, childlike, but her eyes were endless. Deep wells of trauma, of hunger. "We can leave," Jude offered. "We'll go. You can keep the house. We don't want anything." "No," her mouth didn't move. The voice came from the walls. From the blood itself. "You broke the seal. You bled inside the sanctuary." "The what?" Tessa's voice cracked. The girl raised a hand. "The sanctuary. This house. This vessel of old flesh and older gods. You bled, and now it remembers. Now it knows." Jude pulled Tessa toward the hallway. The moment his foot touched the floorboards, they turned black. A wave of blood shot up from the floor, slamming into the walls like a crashing tide. The house let out a low groan. Pictures fell from the walls, revealing hollow spaces behind them, spaces full of bones. Human bones, stained and chewed. Then the hallway shifted. Literally moved. It stretched, elongating unnaturally, twisting left and right like a snake slithering beneath the house's skin. Doors grew where there had been none. Some pulsed. Others bled. They ran. Every step was slower than the last. The house resisted their escape, the floor grabbing at their shoes like quicksand. The walls rippled and moaned, veins bulging across the plaster. Bursting with red. "Where are we going?" Tessa cried. "Upstairs," Jude gasped. "The attic. I saw it earlier. Maybe we can get out through the roof." They reached the staircase. It, too, had changed. The steps were now made of bone. Polished white, perfectly aligned vertebrae. Blood dripped from the banister, pooling in the cracks. Tessa hesitated. "I don't want to step on." A howl erupted behind them. The girl was no longer walking. She was floating, hair rising like she was underwater, her eyes wide and blank, mouth opened in an impossible scream that made the walls buckle and the air go cold. Her fingers stretched into claws, and the veins under her skin glowed with pulsing light, like magma inside glass. They ran up the bone stairs, slipping, scrambling. The second floor was worse. Every door was open. Every room leaked memories. Jude passed a room and saw a child inside. A dead child, sitting on a rocking horse that moved on its own, its eyes missing, its mouth filled with stitched skin. Another room showed a man, strapped to a dentist's chair, his veins hooked to IVs pumping in black liquid. Everywhere, blood seeped from the walls like the house was crying. They found the attic door, a wooden hatch in the ceiling, the pull string dangling like a noose. Jude jumped, grabbing it. The hatch opened with a moan. He shoved the ladder down and helped Tessa climb, then followed, slamming the door shut behind him just as a shriek split the hallway below. The attic was quiet. Too quiet. Dust floated in the air. Moonlight poured through a shattered window. Piles of broken furniture sat in corners, along with ancient portraits of the girl before she became this. She had once been human. A child, perhaps. A sacrifice. Then, a whisper. Tessa. Jude spun. Tessa was frozen, staring at a mirror covered in a black shroud. The voice had come from behind it. Another whisper. Jude. He pulled the cloth free. The mirror reflected nothing. No attic. No moonlight. Just a black void rippling with crimson veins. Then, it blinked. And Tessa screamed. A hand burst from the mirror, slender, pale, soaked in blood, and grabbed her face, dragging her forward. Jude grabbed her waist, pulling back, screaming her name. The mirror crackled. Split. Then exploded. Tessa fell back, gasping, bleeding from her forehead. Jude pulled her close. You okay? You okay? She nodded weakly. But her eyes. They had changed. Something had looked back at her. And something had entered. She whispered, I saw her dream. I saw what she used to be. Before the blood. Jude asked, what is she? Tessa stared at the shattered mirror, her voice hollow. She's the wound that never healed. And we're inside it. Outside the attic hatch, the girl's voice echoed again. Feed me. And the house shuddered, hungrier than ever. The attic groaned beneath them as if exhaling centuries of decay. Moonlight poured in through a cracked window, illuminating the dust in swirling, suffocating patterns. Jude held Tessa close, trembling. Her eyes, still wide, still wrong, stared blankly into the broken mirror, where only a sliver of glass remained. And in that sliver, Jude saw movement. Not his reflection. Not hers. Hers. The girl. She was inside the mirror. Behind the glass, behind the cracks. Smiling. Tessa touched her own face slowly, as if feeling for something that wasn't there. Her fingers hovered over the wound on her forehead, where the mirror shard had cut her. Her blood shimmered unnaturally. Jude, she said, her voice brittle. She's in my head. I feel her. She's bleeding into me. What does that mean? He asked, crawling over to her. She's showing me everything. Before this house. Before she became that. Jude listened as Tessa spoke in fits and fragments. Visions. Echoes. Whispers she couldn't unhear. The girl hadn't always been a monster. She was once a child, Iselin, born into a forgotten blood cult that worshipped the bleed. They believed vampire blood was more than a drug, it was divine. They bred children with vampire lineage and fed them their own ancestors. Iselin was one of the few who survived the ritual of sanguine ascension. She became something else. Not a vampire. Not human. Something, left behind when both worlds abandoned her. The cult died out. But they built the house around her, flesh, bone, and memory, and sealed her inside. Asleep. Fed on drops of blood poured through floorboards. Enough to keep her dreaming, never waking. Until now. You bled, Tessa whispered again, looking at Jude's arm. You woke her. A slow creak sounded below them. Then another. Footsteps. Not rushed, not angry. Patient. Methodical. As if the house itself had grown legs and now paced beneath them, waiting for a command. We need to get out, Jude said, rising to his feet. Now. We climb down, we run, we break the front door, whatever it takes. There is no front door anymore, Tessa said, eyes fixed on the floor. The house changed it. Everything's changed. It's not a house, it's a womb. She's being reborn. Jude grabbed a rusty crowbar from a pile of junk and smashed the attic window open. Cold air rushed in, biting and metallic. Come on. He helped Tessa through, onto the slanted roof. The shingles were slick with blood. It oozed from between the cracks like sap, warm and thick. The entire roof pulsed, like it breathed beneath their feet. Below, the yard was no longer visible. Instead, a field of flesh sprawled in all directions. The grass had blackened and turned to hair. Trees had twisted into bone spires. The world beyond the house was dissolving. The infection was spreading. She's remaking everything in her image, Tessa said behind him. Turning the world into herself. Jude shook his head. No. We get out. We warn someone. We stop this. He started down the roof. The girl appeared. She rose up from the shingles like a phantom, her body formed from the blood-soaked roof tiles. Her skin split and resealed like seams unzipping in reverse. Her mouth hung open, too wide. Her voice came from everywhere. Bleed for me. Jude swung the crowbar at her, but it passed through her like smoke. She didn't attack. Not yet. Instead, she whispered, he bled first. But she carries my wound now. Tessa gasped and fell to her knees. Her nose began to bleed, a thick, black stream of viscous fluid. She screamed as her back arched violently, bones cracking. Veins bulged along her arms, glowing crimson. She's taking me. Tessa cried. She's in my blood. Jude rushed to her side, grabbing her wrists. No. You're stronger than her. Tessa gritted her teeth, shaking. I don't know if I am. He looked down. Her blood was soaking into the roof, and the house responded. With each drop, the shingles shifted, becoming softer, warping into flesh. A giant eye opened beneath them, red and lidless, watching. Then the roof gave way. They fell. Down into a throbbing throat of the house, a shaft of muscle and teeth that swallowed them whole. They landed in a massive chamber, once the living room, now a cathedral of bone and blood. The ceiling was a ribcage. The chandelier was a hanging cluster of hearts, still beating. The floor was a giant, open wound, and in the center. The girl. She stood on a mound of flesh, her arms outstretched. Welcome to the wound, she said softly. Now bleed. Become me. Tessa screamed and lunged at her. The girl didn't move. Tessa tackled her, only to sink into her, as though her body was made of liquid skin. They both collapsed into the wound. Jude yelled her name and rushed forward, but tendrils of flesh burst from the ground and wrapped around his ankles, yanking him back. He struggled, but the house tightened its grip. In the wound, Tessa was changing. Her body convulsed, blood spraying from her mouth and eyes. But she was also fighting. Inside the girl. Inside the memory. Jude saw flickers of both their faces warping, merging, separating. Blood rituals. Screaming cultists. Fangs and fire. Endless, endless bleeding. Then silence. Tessa rose. The tendrils around Jude uncoiled. She walked out of the wound, covered in blood, her eyes no longer hers. Or, not just hers. Jude backed away. Tessa. She tilted her head. Smiled. She's gone, the thing wearing Tessa's voice said. But I remember her. The house shuddered. Above, the bleeding chandelier pulsed faster. The wound yawned open again. From it, dozens of eyes opened. Dozens of mouths began to chant. Feed. Bleed. Remember. Feed. Bleed. Remember. And Jude realized. It was too late. The house wasn't just alive. It had been born again. Jude crawled backward across the veined, pulsing floor, eyes locked on the thing wearing Tessa's skin. Her face held pieces of her, but they were fading. Her mouth twitched with an unnatural grin. Her eyes, Isolin's eyes, were deep, endless pits that shimmered with hunger and ancient sorrow. "Tessa," he whispered, voice hoarse, "if any part of you is still in there, please." The thing tilted its head. She bled willingly. She wanted to understand me. That's how the bond forms. That's how we become. Suddenly, its voice cracked, momentarily, into Tessa's. "Jude." His heart leapt. Then her mouth stretched, split at the sides like rotting canvas, and Isolin returned. "She's gone now." The walls pulsed in time with Jude's racing heart. Every surface glistened like wet muscle. The house's transformation was almost complete. The cathedral of bone groaned as a low vibration trembled through the air, like a heartbeat echoing from the earth's core. The chandelier of hearts above exploded in a spray of blood. From the ruptured ceiling, things dropped. Pale, twitching figures. Dozens of them. Half-born. They had no eyes. Just open mouths, jagged fangs, dripping hunger. Writhing torsos. Bent legs. Blood seeping from their navels as if they had been torn from some womb that should never have existed. The bleeding kin. Jude scrambled to his feet. The crowbar, now slick and rusting, lay inches away. He dove for it and swung just as one of the creatures lunged. The impact cracked its malformed skull open. Black, syrupy blood poured from the wound and hissed as it hit the floor, burning through the living wood. "Run," something inside him said. "You can't fight this." But where? The house was endless now. Every door he opened led to another organ, another artery, another space that was never meant to exist. The house had unzipped itself across dimensions. He turned and ran up the spiraling rib staircase that once led to the second floor. Behind him, the bleeding kin scrambled like insects, screeching, drooling, blind but hungry. As he ran, the walls moaned and whispered. Each breath Jude took burned in his lungs. He burst into what had once been a bedroom, now transformed into a library of flesh. Shelves were made from spines. Books were stitched together, parchments of human skin, inked in blood. The pages fluttered despite the still air, each one whispering ancient hymns to the bleed. One page peeled free and slapped against Jude's chest. He ripped it off and stared. A sketch. A sigil. A warning. Blood must forget. Or blood remembers. He stumbled back as the floor warped beneath him, becoming soft, like a tongue. Isolin was behind him again. Tessa's voice flickered through, "Fight her." Jude spun. "Tessa. You're still there." For a moment, just a breath, her face shifted. Her eyes blinked with horror. "She's eating me." Then her body convulsed, spine cracking backward, and she screamed. Not in pain. In joy. "Your blood still remembers," she whispered. "You took the dose. You're part of me now too." Jude's arm burned. The spot where he'd taken the vampire drug, it pulsed. The blood he thought had worn off days ago was alive again, awakened by the house, by her. He screamed, dropping to his knees as the veins in his arm bulged, black and thick. Isolin/Tessa leaned close. "You feel it, don't you? You want it. You want to bleed." "No," he growled, clenching his fist. "I want her back. She is me. Then I'll kill both of you." He raised the crowbar, but the sigil from the book flashed in his mind again. Not a weapon. A ritual. He needed to make the blood forget. The bond only lived in memory. In trauma. In pain. If he could sever the connection, erase the memory, it might free Tessa. Or kill her. Or kill him. Either way, he had to try. Jude ran through the twisting hallway of meat and teeth, bleeding kin skittering behind him. He reached the heart of the house. The pulsing core beneath the cellar, now fully revealed. It beat once every 10 seconds, each throb strong enough to shake the foundation. He tore open the parchment page, holding it in both hands. He didn't know the language, but the blood in his veins did. He spoke the words aloud. They burned his throat like acid. Iselin screamed from above. The walls shrieked. Flesh peeled from the ceiling in sheets. Blood sprayed like rain. Jude collapsed, screaming as every nerve in his body caught fire. In the center of the ritual circle now drawn on the floor in his blood, Tessa's body fell. Motionless. He crawled to her. Tessa. She opened her eyes. Clear. Human. She blinked. Jude. Relief flooded him. He wept. You're back. But then she looked down at her hands. They were still bleeding. Not red. Black. The bond was weakened, not broken. I don't think I can hold her back much longer. The house screamed in rage. Iselin howled from every wall, every shadow. I'll finish the ritual, Jude said. Tessa grabbed his wrist. You'll die. He nodded. So will she. The final part of the sigil glowed in his mind. Blood must forget. To sever the link, Jude had to erase his own memory, his trauma, his past, his pain. Every moment of grief. Every cut. Every loss. He looked into Tessa's eyes, one last time. I'm sorry, he whispered. But I remember too much. And with a bloodied hand, he completed the circle. The light exploded through the floor. And the house began to scream. The house collapsed inward, not with rubble, but with a sickening shudder, like muscle spasming after a mortal wound. The sigil Jude carved into the floor pulsed with fading light, and above it, he knelt like a statue carved from bleeding stone. His face was blank. Eyes open, unblinking. Lips parted, breath shallow. He didn't know his name. Didn't know where he was. Didn't remember the girl curled beside him. Tessa. She looked at him, horror blooming behind her still human eyes. Jude. No response. Not even a flicker. Her voice cracked. You finished the ritual. He tilted his head, studying her like one might a distant stranger. Who are you? Tessa tried to move, but her muscles spasmed violently. Her veins lit up like black lightning, branching under her skin in jagged rivers. Her nose began to bleed again, thick and tar-like. From the shadows came the sound of shuffling feet. A scraping against the walls. Breathing. The bleeding kin still lingered. Wounded, but not dead. The ritual had severed Iselin's control, but the blood sheet infected lingered in every crack of the house, in Tessa, in the kin, in Jude's forgotten veins. The house remembered. And that was enough. The bleeding began again. The walls oozed. The floor throbbed. From the ruined hallway, one of the creatures stumbled in, twitching, gurgling as if choking on its own teeth. It had lost an arm, no doubt from when the ritual backfired, but it dragged itself forward, guided by instinct. It sniffed the air. Found them. Tessa lunged toward Jude to shield him. Get up. Jude, please. Still, nothing. The kin lunged. Tessa screamed and flung herself sideways, using her body to knock over a nearby rusted pipe. The metal pierced the creature's neck with a wet crack, but it thrashed, unfazed, jaws snapping inches from Jude's face. Tessa crawled, blood trailing behind her like ink, grabbed the crowbar, and brought it down again and again, until the thing's skull caved in like wet clay. Panting, she turned to Jude. He hadn't moved. But something had changed in his expression. A flicker. A single tear rolled down his cheek. Tessa crawled to him, hands trembling. "Do you remember?" Jude looked at her slowly. And whispered, "Your name." She gasped. "Yes. Say it." "T. Tessa." He winced, clutching his head. "It hurts. Everything hurts." She touched his face. "She's still inside us." He nodded. The ritual didn't end her. It only weakened her. Behind them, the house groaned. A crack formed in the ceiling, and something spilled from it, not blood, not fluid, but images. Memories. Bleeding into reality. They flickered like film reels, Tessa's mother dying of withdrawal, Jude's older brother overdosing in a bathtub, the night they met at a drug den lit by stolen neon, the first time they tasted vampire blood, the rush, the ecstasy, the need. The house was using their memories to rebuild itself. They weren't just infected. They were part of the foundation now. "She's making herself again," Jude whispered. "Using us." More kin emerged. Dozens. And worse, familiar faces. Their old dealer. Tessa's mother. Jude's brother. But changed. Their skin pale and cracked. Veins pulsing with the black ichor of vampire blood. Their eyes vacant. Their mouths always open, whispering one word. "Bleed." Tessa turned to Jude. "The only way to stop it is to finish what you started." Jude looked down at the sigil. It still faintly glowed, but its power waned with every passing second. "I have to forget all of it," he said. Tessa nodded. "And I have to stay." "What?" "I'm still bonded. I kept some of her. I can feel it inside me. I can hold her back. If you forget everything, you'll be free. But someone has to hold the door shut." "No. No way." Tessa stepped back. "You gave up everything to save me. Now it's my turn." She raised the crowbar and slashed her palm open, blood splashing across the fading sigil. The lines flared to life again. "Tessa, don't." She smiled sadly. "You saved me from the worst parts of myself. You showed me I could be more than this." She stepped inside the circle. Her eyes burned red, just for a moment. "I'll be her jailer." And then she whispered the final line of the ritual. The light returned, brighter this time. The house screamed again, not in pain, but in fury. The memories vanished in a flash. The kin shrieked and melted into puddles of rot. Jude collapsed. And when he woke, he was standing on a sidewalk in daylight. An empty street behind him. A house no longer there. Just an empty lot. Grass swaying in the breeze. No trace of blood. No door. No scream. He looked at his hands. Clean. His body. Whole. But hollow. A woman walked by, paused, and gave him a curious look. "You alright, kid?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. I think so." She smiled kindly. "You look lost." He blinked at her. "I'm waiting for someone. I think." "What's her name?" He opened his mouth. Paused. His heart ached. But nothing came. "I don't remember." Far away, in a place where the sky bleeds and the walls breathe, Tessa sat in the dark, her body stitched together with shadows. Her eyes flickered red. Her mouth remained shut. She sat on a throne of bone, surrounded by cages made of ribs, inside the deepest pit of the house that had no end. She remembered everything. And the house whispered to her. "Good girl. Keep it sealed. Let him forget, for now." But in the shadows beyond the house, something stirred. Iselin was not done. And blood always remembers. There was a stillness to the lot where the house had once stood. No birds. No wind. The grass grew too evenly, too green, like it had been placed rather than planted. Jude came every week, standing at the edge of the curb like a stray soul staring into a hole only he could see. He didn't know why. Only that something was missing. Something inside him itched when he got too far. An ache in the bones. A subtle pressure behind the eyes. He never dared step onto the grass. His instincts screamed if he did, he wouldn't come back. Sometimes, he dreamed of her. Red hair. Pale skin. Eyes too sharp to be human. A girl in a house that bled through the walls. A name like a whisper lost in static. He would wake with tears in his eyes, heart racing, and hands clenched into fists. But no memory. Just absence. Elsewhere, deep beneath the world of the living, the house dreamed. It had no walls now, only flesh. No floor, only nerve and vein. Its heartbeat came from the girl who sat silent in its center, her face hidden behind matted hair, her eyes dim but open. Tessa. The jailer. The anchor. And though she had held strong for months, keeping the thing at bay, it was wearing her down. The house whispered now in her sleep. Iselin's voice was returning. And the blood was stirring. Tessa sat cross-legged in the throne of bone, her skin cracked with red lines like spiderwebs, her body beginning to resemble the kin she once fought. She didn't eat. Didn't sleep. She didn't have to. Time moved differently in the bleeding realm. Pain was the only constant. Then one day, it changed. She felt something. A presence outside the walls. Him. Jude. For the first time in weeks, she moved. She stood. Her chains rattled. Not iron, but memory. Love. Sacrifice. The things that kept her tethered. But his presence stirred something in the house. A ripple. A fracture. And Iselin slipped through. A drip of blood from the ceiling. A whisper in the cracks. A smile in the dark. Tessa turned, and behind her, a figure took shape. Iselin, no longer just a voice, but a shape of bleeding robes and a mouth stitched shut with thorns. "You kept me caged," Iselin rasped, though her mouth didn't move. Tessa stood her ground. He forgot. That was the deal. Iselin's eyes glowed. But he remembers now. Tessa flinched. "No," she whispered. "His dreams," the vampire queen hissed. "His visits. His ache." It opened the door. And with those words, Tessa saw it. A crack in the house. A thread of memory. A name, half-spoken, lingering on Jude's tongue in the waking world. Tessa. He remembered her. Even if just a piece. And that was all Iselin needed. The house shuddered. The blood boiled. The kin stirred. Above, in the world of the living, Jude sat on the curb again, hands trembling. He'd had another dream. A different one. Not horror, but sorrow. The girl in the red dress was crying. Alone. Surrounded by bleeding walls. And she called his name. He whispered hers in return. Tessa. And then. The lot split open. Not visibly, but in him. A pull, sudden and fierce, like a thread being yanked from the base of his skull. He staggered back, clutching his chest. And the world changed. The sky dimmed. The air thickened. And the grass bled. A door appeared. Old. Wooden. Covered in carvings that moved like worms. Without thinking, Jude stepped forward. And vanished. The house screamed. Tessa spun as its walls rippled like muscle. She felt it before she saw it, Jude, emerging through the bleeding door at the far end of the chamber. He looked lost. Pale. But whole. "Jude," she screamed. He staggered, looking around, mouth agape. "Tessa." But something else came through with him. Iselin. Not just her spirit now, but her full, terrible form. Tall, ancient, soaked in the blood of 1,000 harvests. Her mouth was no longer sewn shut. Her teeth were endless. "You brought him back," she said, grinning with rows of jagged crimson. Tessa turned to Jude. "You need to leave. Now." But he stepped closer. "I remember now," he said. "Everything. I remember us." She shook her head, tears falling. "You were safe. I couldn't leave you." Iselin shrieked and lunged. Tessa screamed, hurling herself at the queen with everything left inside her. They collided in a spray of blood and fire. Jude dropped to his knees. The house collapsed again. But this time, not into pain. Into memory. Jude pressed his hand against the floor and began to speak. Not a ritual. Not a spell. But a story. Their story. He spoke of how they met. The nights they bled together. The moment they chose each other over the high. The fight. The sacrifice. The cage. He gave it all to the house. All the memories. All the pain. All the love. And the house burned. Iselin screamed as the blood walls cracked, and the kin caught fire. Tessa gripped Jude's hand, both of them ablaze with memory. "I love you," she said. "I remember," he replied. And together, they pulled the house down from the inside. In the waking world, the lot stood silent again. No house. No blood. Just silence. A single figure stood there now, Jude. Alone. But something was different. He remembered her. He carried her story in his blood now. And somewhere, far from time and space, in a place where memory became fire, Tessa burned forever. But she smiled. Because he never forgot. And the blood never claimed him again. The curse was broken. But the world? It still bled. Because somewhere, someone was always willing to pay for the high. And someone else was always willing to bleed. The end.